Hello everyone and welcome to lesson 2 in the Art of Wedding Photography course. You are here again with myself, Caroline Callahan, your educator for the Art of Wedding Photography, and absolutely great to have you back for our second lesson of the course. But okay, look, just to give a quick recap on our first lesson before we move forward. So on lesson 1, we took a look at wedding photography styles. So we looked at the big variation there, anything from your classic style of wedding photography to candid and photojournalism, and of course a quirky style of wedding photography. We then moved on and looked at how to get started within the industry and a little bit on promoting yourself. And we finished up by looking at a gear guide, so all that kind of different types of equipment that you can bring along with you on any wedding day. Okay, so let's have a look at what we'll be learning in lesson 2. We will start by looking at the benefits of doing a location scouting. You'll learn how to approach a pre-wedding or engagement shoot. And then very importantly, we will look at all the preparation that you need to do before the wedding day. And then we'll have a quick look at what the benefits of having a second photographer can be. And hopefully by the end of all of this, you'll gain a real insight into why being well prepared can make or break a good wedding photographer. And as usual, I do think it's important to understand why we are learning what we are and how it fits into your education as a wedding photographer. Well, today's lesson it's more about all the pre-wedding organisation that you need to do for any wedding. And I really believe it's very important, because if you try and figure out all of this stuff on a wedding day, well then you're going to be wasting valuable time that you could otherwise be spending actually taking photographs, or maybe even just taking a well-earned break. You don't get many quiet times on a wedding day, so if you're relying on these times to try and figure out how you're going to approach the next part, well then you're just adding to the potential stress levels on the day, and this is something that you obviously want to reduce as much as possible. So you want to reduce the potential stress on the wedding day. But if you don't pre-plan, you're much more likely to miss great photo opportunities. So whether or not it's because you didn't notice the perfect location for the shots, because you were in such a rush, or maybe you just missed some great candid moments because you were off searching for these spots. Whereas all the pre-wedding preparation that we're going to talk about today, it will not only eliminate the potential for any of that to happen, but it will also help build your relationship with the clients, which is also hugely important. And all of this will therefore ensure that your day runs smoothly. And honestly, I know so many amazing photographers who have tried wedding photography but swore they would never do it again because they just couldn't handle all the stress on the day. It was very hectic, and they are very, very busy days. So just try and be fair to yourself and give yourself the best chance to enjoy the day and enjoy all the amazing photo opportunities that you will be presented with. Okay, so let's start by talking about a location scouting. And when I say a location scouting, I basically mean a reconnaissance, to use the more formal term. So more likely you will hear this referred to as a photo recce, and it's basically giving yourself a chance to do some pre-planning for your shoot. It literally means going out to the different locations where you will potentially be photographing on any given wedding shoot. Okay, so it's certainly something that I absolutely consider vital for any wedding. And if you are if you are very experienced in wedding photography, well then fair enough. Maybe you don't do this anymore. But if you are only starting out, or if you're still relatively new to wedding photography, well then I highly, highly recommend you do this before the day. Now, I know you might ask, why would you spend your valuable time doing something like this? Well, on the day of the wedding, you're simply not going to have the time to figure out where to do the photos. If you arrive very early, maybe you will have a bit of extra time, but really on the day of the wedding, I just think, you should want to feel confident from the very beginning and have a really good idea of how the day will run and where you're going to be going for the shots. And that just means that you can be concentrating on your shot list itself. However, I would say if you do a location scouting sometime before the wedding, it means you can explore the surrounding area for any interesting locations. And certainly when you have more time, you may find those little spots that you would otherwise miss on the day. But it is also allowing you to see if there's any nearby alternatives. So, we'll say if the weather goes bad and you suddenly can't do shots outdoors, or I mean, even if you're just doing it close enough to the wedding day, you're not going to be surprised by any recent road works or any building or anything like that that's going on in the area. It's also going to allow you to get an idea of what time you will need. So you can literally time how long does it take you to drive from the venue to the church or to the spot that you want to bring the wedding couple. And that means you're going to be much more organized. And honestly, everybody loves an organized photographer. It's also letting you familiarize yourself with the area so you're less likely to get lost. And honestly, if you're getting lost on a wedding day or if you're trying to pay more attention to directions, it leaves you less time to be thinking about what shots you have or what you may still need to get. And it's very, very easy to get flustered if you don't know where you're going. So honestly, I can't emphasize the importance of this. But if I'm doing a location scouting, I'm going to be taking photos as I go. And sometimes I might even bring somebody along with me so I can set them up in the spot, maybe see how the light is on them. Is natural light going to be enough or do I need to use flash? I'll also, how will I frame them? What's the best angle? And I can literally just even be practicing posing on them as well. And all of this is just going to give you more focus on the big day, and that allows you to be much more calm and much more collected. And if you do want to go as far as maybe taking some shots on your phone, you can literally have that as a handy visual reference in your pocket on the day. So again, you can refer back to it whenever you feel you might need to. Okay, next to talk about is a pre-wedding shoot or an engagement shoot, as a lot of people might call it. And I just want to talk about the benefits of doing an engagement shoot or pre-wedding shoot. So again, for those of you that are quite new to photography, I do think this is especially beneficial. And the whole idea of this is that it's essentially, it's nearly a trust building exercise between you and the couple, as well as allowing you to get to know the couple and the couple to get to know you. And this is really important because, number one, let's face it, you're very unlikely to be photographing models. A majority of everyday people, they do hate being in front of the camera, especially for any kind of length of time. But if they're more comfortable with you, they will be more relaxed on the day. And it just means it's not going to be such a big deal then. And then if they do see that you're getting great results from the engagement shoot, it means their confidence in you will grow. You'll also be able to practice poses with the couple, and that way you literally get to see what does or doesn't work for them. So you should be able to see what poses they're uncomfortable with, and then you'll see others that you will get the most natural or relaxed expressions with. But number two, it also means that they're going to have a better understanding of what you expect from them on the big day. So they're going to be more familiar and more comfortable with the poses and your instruction on the day. And it's going to lead to much better efficiency for you. But let's face it, it is actually a sales opportunity as well. So, they could decide to buy a shot for their house or maybe for the invites or maybe a save the date. But it could be a little bit extra that you could offer them before they've even booked you. And if they are going to be trying to decide between a few photographers, this might actually be the little bit extra that means they choose you instead of another photographer. They're not going to just book the first photographer they come to. So maybe just offer them that little bit extra. I know certainly plenty of people always ask, would I charge for an engagement shoot? And it really will depend. If they've chosen a wedding package that includes a pre-wedding shoot, well then I certainly won't charge for the shoot, and I might include maybe one free print within that. But then, and I know certainly majority of photographers would do something quite similar. However, if they want any additional prints or anything framed, well, then I will charge for something like that. But it's absolutely going to be up to yourself how much you are willing to charge or not. Now, before you do the shoot, it is worth talking to the couple to get a feel for what they want and who they are. So ask what mood do they want the shoot to have. Do they want something quite fun and quite playful, like in this image, or would they prefer something maybe a bit sexier, maybe a bit more sensual, or maybe just a little bit more romantic? You need to ask them, do they have any favourite hobbies, any favourite places? Again, we can see this couple obviously quite like biking, and anything like that can be a great way to show off their personalities, as well as giving the couple something to do, and therefore they will feel more relaxed in the shoot. But based on all of this, you can give them tips and recommendations on how to approach the shoot. So maybe for a more fun style, you could recommend daytime, romantic maybe would be at sunset, or maybe a more sensual shoot could be in the evening. And you can certainly also be making recommendations on outfits to suit this as well. So again, we can see with this couple, they're just wearing shorts and bright colors and patterns that again is just reflecting the playful mood of the couple. But you can certainly ask them to bring a few different options. It will help you get a variation of shots, but it also means if they do happen to turn up with quite clashing patterns, well, then you can get maybe one of them to actually get changed. Whereas an image like this is certainly much more romantic. It has a kind of a softer feel to it. So rather than doing an activity, the couple, they're just kind of embracing, the bride to be and the groom, they still have a very much kind of relaxed, happy expressions. But because they've been given enough space to feel relaxed and they're not even looking at the camera, they're more connected as a couple. And that's a very important part of any engagement shoot. Make sure they feel comfortable hugging, kissing and just being affectionate with each other. And it might take some time, but you do want to be trying to encourage some affection as much as possible. Now, it may mean that you need to use a long lens and move away from them to give them a bit more space, but that is exactly what will give a more romantic feel. Now, you'll certainly find a few couples that might not be into this. They might prefer something much more formal. But again, if you have asked them the right questions before you do the shoot, you'll have a good idea if this is the case or not. And a good tip, if you're asking the couple to kiss, ask them to kiss slowly and kiss gently, okay? I absolutely promise you they will not mind. But you will notice if you just ask people to kiss, very often they'll just go in for either a very quick kiss that's actually quite easy to miss, or they could go the opposite way and they could really go for it, and that will just mean that their faces are going to be kind of smushed in together, which isn't is not particularly flattering for a lot of people. Now, sometimes I would actually prefer getting the shots just before or just after the kiss as well, though. And certainly, if you ask them to kind of lean in as if they're about to kiss and ask them to just hold it a moment, you can get a really lovely, sweet reaction of them being very cute and quite bashful together. And the same does apply just after a kiss as well. And it's always worth taking a few detail shots or just shots from different focal points as well. So, in other words, don't feel like you always have to have their faces in the shots. You can get something like this of them holding hands. Obviously, the inclusion of the little heart is very sweet and quite unique, but do try and maybe feature the engagement ring in a few shots as well. Maybe you take a few of their shoes, even just from the neck down, particularly if they're quite a stylish couple, kind of show off their outfits. That can often kind of imply their different personalities as well. So anything that's going to be a little bit different, just think how can you get a different viewpoint. Now, some couples may like to do this in the studio, which is absolutely fine as well if you do have the facilities. The main thing is to get the couple comfortable with posing and being in front of the camera and comfortable and confident with you and your abilities. And all of this, I promise you, will help you out on the big day too. And it will give you a really great sense of who the couple are, what their personalities are like, and the mood that they're going for. And you can apply all of this to the wedding shots later on as well. Now, again, it's also going to give the couple a chance to get used to your direction as well, which, like I say, will lead to better efficiency on the wedding day. Now, you may decide to do this as your location scouting as well, and if you can organise it and work it that you go out with the couple to the venue and you can do pre engagement or pre wedding shoots at this point, that can work quite well as well. However, don't feel it absolutely has to be in the same locations as where the wedding is. They may well have a favourite spot that they won't have time to go to on the wedding day, and so might be happy to do something quite different as well. And certainly, plenty of couples may not want to do this at all. And if they don't, that's absolutely no problem. I do certainly, just for yourself, if you're starting off in photography, it's a great opportunity for you to practice with them. But look, not everybody's going to want to do it. So don't force anybody if they're not comfortable or if they're not interested. Okay, so I'm going to move on, and I really wanted to talk specifically about pre-wedding organisation or all the pre-wedding planning um, that you as a wedding photographer should be doing, because I do feel it's where a lot of people starting out can underestimate the importance of this. And look, I'm actually going to let you in on a little bit of a secret. I would absolutely say that the most successful wedding photographers are actually the most organized photographers and photographers who communicate really well. And you'll find when you feel more confident, everything's going to run much smoother. You're going to be happier. The wedding couple will be happier. And then if everything's running smoothly and everything's on time, everybody feels more relaxed. And you might find you actually have more time to get those more creative shots that will really, really impress the couple. But look, this all has to start early. So it all starts right back to when you first meet your clients. This is actually a very important moment. Now, you may have met the couple before they booked you, but if that was more of a sales pitch, I guess, to get them to book you in the first place, and if you feel you didn't really get a good idea of how the day will be, well then do try and meet them again. Certainly be accommodating. You might have to go to them, or even if it's just a call over the phone or Skype. The idea is that you're just getting information out of them about the day. And the earlier you do this, the better. And that's because, really, as a photographer, you should be giving advice about timings on the day. And you can certainly always be getting back in touch with them about 3-4 weeks before the wedding to see if anything has changed or if they do have any last minute questions for you. And if you don't meet them early on, pretty much most of the timings will be dictated by the hotel or other suppliers, okay? And they're not necessarily going to be taken into consideration what time you may need as a photographer. So, for example, we'll say your clients tell you that they're having a church wedding in location A, and then they want to move on and do some photographs in location B, and then they have to get back to the reception in location C. And we'll say each of those have a 30-minute drive in between them. We'll say the ceremony is booked for 2 p.m. and the dinner in the reception is to be booked at 5:30 or 5:30 p.m. Okay, now if you break that down, that's 3.5 hours in between the ceremony and the dinner. It may sound like a lot of time, but when you start breaking down the times with the couple, you'll find actually it's not all that much. So literally you start asking them questions about the day, and you start asking them, what type of ceremony is it? How long is the ceremony likely to be? Honestly, I've found they can vary anything from 20 to 40 minutes depending on whether or not it's a civil ceremony or maybe a religious ceremony. Then, are they going to meet and greet their guests after the ceremony? And if so, how many guests are they going to have? There's a huge difference between greeting 20 guests and greeting 200 guests. Now, certainly for most religious ceremonies in Ireland, with quite a lot of guests, I would certainly leave about 1.5 hours. Because number one, brides are actually rarely on time. The ceremony itself, it may only be 30 minutes, though quite honestly, I've experienced many that have been an awful lot longer. But number two, meeting and greeting guests can actually take quite a bit of time. So we'll say at this stage, there was a 3.5 hour gap, minus the 1.5 hour for the ceremony, 1 hour for driving, and that's all going well. That's already 2.5 hours gone, and you haven't even taken any photographs yet. So you're left with 1 hour for the couple to move around the different locations and to do family photographs. Remember, if a bride's got a big dress on and high heels on, what might normally be a 5 minute walk to a location can easily become 10 to 15 minutes. If you have bad traffic on the day, well, that can literally add any amount of time. Then the family photos, they can just take time, literally just waiting to round people up, waiting for people to turn up for these photographs. Now, you might still be able to get everything done if nothing does go wrong, but the couple probably won't have any time to enjoy their drinks reception, and they'll probably feel quite rushed going in for their dinner. Now, if they are okay with that, that's absolutely fine. But if you can break this down and maybe just recommend either they move the dinner to 6 p.m. or maybe the ceremony moves to 1:30. It will take quite a bit of pressure off you, and it more than likely will leave them with a bit of time to enjoy their drinks reception. However, you have to get in early with this advice before they send out their invites. And one last thing I'll say about this, that there is a huge variation in weddings these days. So whether or not it's because of cultural or religious differences, the number of guests, the different locations, and to be honest, you want to make the most of all of these. You don't want to be turning around to a couple and saying, no, we can't do that. It is their wedding day, so they can do what they want, but you just need to be confident enough to say, I would love to do that, but we don't have enough time. What can we change to make this happen? And that way, they're just going to see you as being really accommodating, and they want to see that you're eager about doing these photographs. But you just need to be able to break it down like this for them, nice and logically, so they can see for themselves, okay, it's clearly not enough time to get very much done. The easiest way to do this, to start breaking down the day and working out the timings with the couple, is to just give them a very basic wedding information sheet. So, look, if you're meeting with them in person, you can fill this out as you're chatting to them. If it's not possible to meet them, well, then you email it on to them and you get them to fill it out and send it back to you. Now it starts off basic enough with all the obvious kind of contact details. So their full names, phone numbers, addresses, email, all that stuff. From there on in, I start to ask about who are the VIPs of the day. And so I want everybody's names. So VIPs, I would consider the family members, obviously the parents, brothers, sisters, and certainly the bridal party as well. I'd even be asking about names for any in-laws or nieces and nephews as well, okay? Just because you're usually expected to include these in group photos. And you may even be asked to get their own kind of family shots within that. And I just certainly like to try and be as personable as possible with everybody. So I like to know their names if possible. But obviously you just need a list of who is considered in these families. And that way it's much easier to pre-organise. But I also want to ask about the bridal party, obviously including the flower girls, page boys. And then at that stage, I try and get the contact details of somebody who's going to be with the couple on the day. So maybe a groomsman or a bridesmaid or a brother or a sister. Just in case, for whatever reason, if I have to contact somebody on the morning, I think they're much more likely to answer their phone than the couple will be. But then we move on to the day itself. So locations and timings are obviously very important, but I'll ask them about a lot of their different suppliers as well. So, do they have a wedding coordinator I'll have to work with? If not, who's the coordinator in the hotel? Who's conducting the ceremony? Is there a videographer I'll have to work with? Car hire, band, and DJ? I might even go as far as asking about the flowers. And there is a couple of reasons for this. Obviously, I need to know who I might need to be working with on the day, but it's also getting the couple talking about every detail of the day. So if there is anything particularly special or maybe something a little bit different that's been organised, it will get brought up at this point, okay? And then, I can be gauging what I think they're most interested or excited by. So then I can make a note to get a special shot of that. But it's also going to help me with my networking later on as well. So, if I get a great shot of the band, well, then I can easily find out who they are and I can send it on to them. Now, I always leave space on this sheet as well for the clients to request any special shots that they may want. So if there's any special details, pets, grandparents, aunts, uncles, particular friends, anything that they might want a special shot of or with. And it can be anything at all, but again, the idea of it is just making your clients think about all of this stuff before the wedding day. Very, very often there's usually a specific group of friends they may want shots with. So again, I will want the names of everybody for this one, or more importantly, the name of somebody who's going to be able to round these people up for me whenever I'm ready for them. A few tips for you all though, and these just come from my personal experience. Firstly, tell the bride to give her hair and makeup artist a finished time, okay? And if at all possible, do trials for the hair and makeup. I'm just telling you this because I have found hair and makeup to be the most common delays on a wedding day. However, if a bride says to the hairdresser, okay, we need to be finished by 12 p.m., what time do we need to start? That just means the hairdresser has no excuse but to finish on time. Likewise, if they're doing hair and makeup trials, it means they already know exactly what they're doing on the wedding day, so that you're less likely to have a bride say, I hate this, change it, change everything, which is obviously going to create a huge amount of delays if that does happen. But look, I find that really, really helps keep everything on track, and it does prevent it going too late. But a second tip, once I have all the timings from the couple, I'll actually email them my times, and by that I just mean if the couple tell me the ceremony starts at 2 p.m, I will tell them I want to arrive at the ceremony location for 20 past 1, and then I'll get shots of the groom as he's hanging around here. For me to be there at that time, I need to leave the bride's house at 12:50, so she needs to be in her dress by 12:30. Bridesmaids to be in their dresses by 12:15, mother and family of the bride to be dressed by 12 p.m. And that just means everybody knows what is expected of them when, and everybody isn't leaving it last minute to get dressed. Now, I also want everybody ready for the bride when she's going to need their help. And I do want a shot of everybody, when the bride is revealed to everybody for the first time, I don't want them kind of half dressed. I want them all looking amazing and looking great. So then the shot is much more likely to be chosen. Now, these are certainly my tips and my advice. Not everybody will abide by them. Not everybody will get to run on time like this. So it is important for you to be quite flexible on the wedding day. But I think if you're at least getting in there with the advice, they will be much more self-conscious about time. And very often, even if they are running late, it's never dramatically late if they're at least trying to go by your guidelines. Now, in saying all of that, as much as I'll always be asking the couple, do they have any special shots they want, I do, of course, have my own shot list to work from on the day. And I basically just break this down into manageable sections. So we'll say morning with the bride, morning with the groom, the ceremony shots, the family shots, etc., etc. And then you start to break down each section of the day. So I'll always think What moments do I need to capture within this time frame? So if we take the morning with the bride as an example, so the moments you might be wanting to photograph would be the bride having her makeup done, maybe giving the bridesmaids presents, putting on the dress, and so on. And then I'll think about details that I could capture. So again, if we're using the morning at the brides as an example, the shoes, the jewellery, flowers, dresses, and so on. Then I will start thinking about what formal shots do I need to get. And so this would certainly be a portrait of the bride once her makeup is done. I like to have one of each of the bridesmaids once they're dressed, the bride once she's ready, a full length, a close up, bride with the flowers, back of the dress. Always try and get a creative shot as well. Then the bride with her bridesmaids, bride with parents, and so on. And after this, I'm then watching out for any little extras. So, maybe if the girls are drinking champagne, I'll get a shot of them maybe doing a toast or a cheers. If there's anything like gifts coming in from the groom, anything at all that's going to help you with those candid shots, I'll be watching out for. But the idea of this is that you're breaking the day into manageable sections for yourself. And then if you break down each section like this and just think of what shots within that time frame would you like to capture. And then if the bride or groom have requested any particular shots, I'll add them into the appropriate section. And it just means you've got a nice little reference point to refer back to. It's very easy to get stuck for ideas at certain stages. Now, ideally, I would say to you that you're literally only looking over this shot list at any kind of quiet moments throughout the day. Don't be constantly looking at it and missing moments because you're paying more attention to the shot list than what's actually happening all around you. Now, just to move on and talk about a few other bits of paperwork, I guess, that you may want to include. Certainly, I think a contract is well worthwhile considering. I think it's nearly mandatory at this point, okay? Certainly if you're doing this in any kind of professional manner. And a contract should always outline your terms and agreements on the coverage, the price, and what exactly is included for that price. Then any kind of payment schedule. So, when are any deposits or payments due? So, we'll say, for example, you might say that you've agreed to give them a disc of images. And then you might expect 50% to be paid 6 months before the wedding and the final balance to be paid 1 month before the wedding day. You might also include details of presentation. So, do you supply an online gallery for them to review their images, or do they have an album included in the price? And if so, what size and how many pages or images could be in that album? Now, there's certainly quite a lot of things that I like to keep relatively vague, okay? So maybe just in terms of how many images you actually will show them. So this is going to be different for every single wedding. And we'll say if I'm only covering from the ceremony until the beginning of the meal, I might say to them that I will show them 400 to 600 images. And I'll always explain to the couple, it's very dependent on how much is going on the day and honestly how many people are there as well. But then within a contract, I'll start to get very specific about products. So we'll say with an album, I'll say if it only includes 10 or 20 pages. If it's a 10 by 10 inch album with a plain leather cover, for example. And the reason for that is simple. The cost from my suppliers is based on how many pages, how big the pages are, and then if it does have a customized cover or not. That all of that can basically drive the cost up for me. And therefore, I just like to have the option of being able to charge extra should the couple like to upgrade. It's also really worth putting in a little section just to cover yourself in case of an emergency. So we'll say, for example, if something should happen to you that leaves you unable to photograph the day, I just like to have a little clause that says I'm happy to offer a full refund, or I could organise a replacement photographer and still look after the editing or look after putting together an album for them. Now, I will always reassure the couple that this will literally only happen if I cannot physically do the shoot for some reason that I'd ever do this. And look, a contract like this should basically just prevent any kind of confusion, and it covers you for maybe those clients that are just whether they're just not so good at listening, or maybe a lot of people will make presumptions just because of what their friend or their brother or sister might have had at their wedding, okay? And you have to be fair, a lot of couples, they're juggling a huge amount of information from all the different suppliers. So it is best to just have it in writing somewhere that they can double check and that you can't be accused of changing the agreement. But look, very importantly as well, you don't want any misunderstandings, and you certainly don't want to end up in a situation where you you believe that you're only starting to photograph at the wedding ceremony, but your clients might have presumed that you would start at the bride's house. And look, if that's the case and you only figure this out on the wedding day, well, then it's too late to do anything about that. So look, just have it in writing where everybody can see clearly what exactly they are getting, and understand what to expect. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the benefits of having a second shooter or a second photographer or photography assistant along with you on a wedding day could be. And look, I think really it is well worth considering having somebody else come along with you on a wedding day. It's not always going to be possible, but maybe if you get yourself to a situation where you can afford to pay somebody, or certainly if it's a bigger wedding and you know the couple have a huge amount of requests, it can really help with this. And certainly, if you're happy to pass on some of the shot list and let them be responsible for some of it, it's going to give you a lot more time for doing other photographs. And it's just taking some of the pressure off of you. But also, if you have more time, you might find you're actually getting more creative with the shots that you are doing. And certainly, I would say doing some of the detail shots can be an easy one to pass on to another photographer. And that, for example, could leave you with a lot more time to spend with the wedding couple themselves. Or, you might find that you prefer to spend the morning with just the bride, and you might want to send a second photographer off to get the shots of the guys. And that can be especially handy if the couple are not getting ready in the same location. Otherwise, it might just be too hard to do both just yourself. It's certainly every photographer's worst nightmare to have a technical breakdown. So, if something should go wrong with your camera at a really important moment, if you've got a second photographer along with you, that second photographer can jump in and get the shots while you're figuring out and fixing the problem. And this is especially important if you don't have a spare photography equipment, okay? Really, I would say you should have a spare camera along with you on the day, but if not, well, then it becomes much more important to have a second photographer with you. And another great benefit, especially if the couple have requested a crazy amount of family shots, is to actually send the second photographer off to get some more candid shots. And so they can literally be moving in between guests, maybe at the drinks reception, and just capturing all the moments that the couple could actually be missing and will certainly love to see later on. And you might find that you may not have much time for this if you are getting caught up doing a lot of family shots. On the other hand, if the second photographer is hanging around with you while you're maybe doing the main family or the group shots, they could be moving around the groups and maybe getting shots from different angles, or maybe they start pulling people aside and getting some extra kind of different group combinations. Even if they're getting all the banter that's going on behind you, the photographer, especially if I always find with the bridal party, there's always heaps and heaps of fun going on. But as the main photographer, you could be concentrating on the formal shots, so it can be great to have a second photographer along with you to capture everything that's going on behind you. This is one of the type of shots that I'm talking about. So just imagine the photographer is taking some formal shots with the bride and bridesmaids. Basically what's happened here is the lads are standing off to one side and they're inevitably going to start messing and joking around. Now, if you're the main photographer here, you could be concentrating on the girls, and so you could easily miss something like this. However, if you have a second photographer, they can be watching a lot more, what's going on around you, and they could easily capture something like this. Now, they could also be capturing other family groups as they show up or are waiting around. And, another, like a little nice example of this could be if you're doing the family groups. And now I will talk about how to set these up in lesson 5. But basically, you'll have the entire family group to start and then you work down. So once you're done with the siblings, you'll find that the brothers and sisters will probably be waiting around. And this is a perfect time for your second photographer to grab, we'll say for example, the bride's brother, his wife, and his kids, and the second photographer could get their little family photograph. Now, this might not be expected of you, but I always try and add these shots to my shot list. But then if I have the second photographer look after this, all the better, okay? That way, not only will the couple be happy, but you're keeping the extended family happy as well. And here's just another example of a shot a second photographer could capture. So, if you're doing some setup shots of the bride and groom, well, then there's no reason why your second photographer couldn't get shots of them from a different angle or a different viewpoint. And, maybe you're doing this shot as full length, but the second photographer might do it as a mid-length shot or a close-up shot. They could even be using different lenses, which will give it a very different look. Maybe you're using flash and they're not using flash. And the point of all of this is that it's adding variation to your shots, which the couple will absolutely love, and it will have them feeling like they're getting great coverage or great value for money. However, if you feel that you do have all the family and the formal shots under control, you could send them off to photograph the drinks reception instead. Now, they can approach this in a number of ways. Personally, I love getting shots like this where the person just doesn't even know they're been photographed. So it's very informal, but again, the wedding couple will love seeing something like this. Now, equally, they can be moving around. They can be setting up the little groups that are hanging out and chatting an awful lot together, or maybe even just getting shots of different couples around the place or different groups of friends that are together. They don't have to be as formal as what you might be doing with the family or the bridal party shots, but it's still nice to get portraits of all the other little groups that are together. Again, remember, they might not be the VIPs as in, the bridal party or family, but they have been invited to the wedding, so you have to presume they're still quite special and important to the couple in one way or another. However, I do think there's a few tips worth giving you if you are going to have a second photographer along with you on the day. Number one, very importantly, one thing to be aware of, having a second photographer can actually cause quite a bit of confusion with the guests. So let's say, for example, if you're doing group shots and you have the second photographer taking photographs beside you or near you, you'll probably find that half the guests might look at you and the other half will be looking at the second photographer. And you absolutely need to avoid this. It might mean that you need to be kind of quite loud and quite clear about who is the main photographer and where they need to look and who they're listening to. But it's really just down to good communication, okay? And I'd absolutely say, as with your wedding couple, communication is very, very important with your second photographer as well. So certainly I would say, as a lead photographer, you'll need to let the second photographer know what you expect of them, where you want them to be. If you do want them using the same settings as you need to let them know. If you want them using different settings or different equipment, again, you need to let them know. But look, equally, if you do have a set style for a particular shot that now you're asking the second photographer to do, you might have to meet with them beforehand. You might need to show them examples and you might need to explain technically how you do achieve that particular look. Synchronize the time on your cameras beforehand, okay? This is going to help a huge amount when it comes to the editing afterwards. So literally, if you have your time synced, so think of all those kind of spy movies you would have grown up with, and everybody they'll kind of agree to rendezvous at a certain time, and everybody synchronizes the time on their watches, okay? You're doing the exact same thing just on your camera, and then that way, when you bring these photographs into Photoshop or Lightroom, you can arrange them by date and time taken, meaning everything's in chronological order, and then you can start editing them in a much more kind of logical way. Agree beforehand how you're going to get the images from the second photographer and when, okay? If you've got a particular deadline, you need to let them know that they can work towards that. Now, if you do have your own memory cards and maybe you give them to the second photographer and you literally just take the memory cards at the end of the day, absolutely great. Okay, I mean, if you're happy to do the editing on all the images, that's absolutely fine. However, if you want them to take them home and edit them and maybe only send you the best shots that they've taken, again, that's absolutely fine. You just need to come to this agreement beforehand so everybody knows what's actually expected. And equally, if you're going out, you might start out as a second photographer first. I'm sure you'd want to have all of this agreed beforehand. And I'm sure you would appreciate the main photographer discussing all of this with you before you go out and photograph with them. So there it is. That is it for lesson 2. So I really, really hope you've enjoyed the lesson. For the moment, I'm just going to do a quick review of what you have learned today. So look, hopefully you've gained a few insights into why you should be doing a location scouting, and hopefully you've got a good understanding of the benefits of this and how it will help you when it comes to the actual wedding day shoot. We then learned how you could approach an engagement shoot or a pre-wedding shoot, and we've discussed how this would help you build your relationship with your clients. But I really, really hope we've instilled the importance in organisation and pre-wedding preparation or pre-wedding planning, okay? It will make a huge difference to you, especially if you're just starting off with photography. But to be honest, I would say even the most experienced photographer will know the difference in just winging it to actually being well prepared. And lastly, we've had a look at the benefits of having a second photographer along with you on the day, as well as a few tips that will hopefully help the two of you work well together. Our next step is actually going to be going to photographing the day. So let me outline what we will be covering in lesson 3. So look, like I say, this is where we're going to start looking at the shots you will be taking on the wedding day. And just like your shot list, I'm going to break the day down into manageable little sections which we can look at in detail. So lesson 3, we're starting at the beginning of the day, which is obviously the morning. So this is a part of the day where the couple, they're going to be getting ready. So we're going to look at a few different examples of shots you should be taking. So anything from the informal, the formal, and the detail shots as well. And we're going to discuss some of the technical considerations for you. And we're going to look at the detail shots in their own right as well. So throughout the entire day, what details to look out for, and again, how to achieve certain looks technically. And we'll do all of this through a huge amount of visual analysis. Okay, so guys, let me say a big thank you for attending lesson 2. Again, I really hope you've enjoyed the lesson and feel you've learned a lot of stuff from it. If you need to get in contact with us, you can email our support team at support@shawacademy.com. Alright guys, I will see you back on lesson 3 where we're going to start looking at the morning shots and the detail shots. Thanks and see you then.